Dark Souls is a series that, in the past, I admittedly wasn't really all that fond of. Being an aficionado of fighting games, as well as a fan of stylish, faster-paced character action titles like Devil May Cry, the slower and more deliberate combat of the Souls series just never really connected with me, and I kept finding myself quickly bouncing off after every attempt to get into the series. It wasn't until a pandemic shut down my beloved offline fighting game community and kept me inside with so much free time in my hands that I would consider even trying again. Maybe it was because grinding fighting games online didn't have the same appeal to me, or it was watching Obama die for the 50th time to gargoyles. But I decided to give the original Dark Souls one more shot, and I fell in love. Over the course of 2020 and even deep into 2021, I would do multiple playthroughs of DS1, even going as far as to mod the game with randomizers and learning some speedrunning strats because I was just enjoying my time with the game so much. And now with Elden Ring finally here, I'm ready to lose myself to the magic of these games once more. I think the reason why these games are now landing with me this time is that I came to a realization that they have much more in common with fighting games than I knew. They both have their barriers of entry that intimidate plenty of interested newcomers, and they both demand your attention and patience to understand and master them. But are there more comparisons that we can draw? With Elden Ring destroying what little free time I had left in my life, I decided to revisit my thoughts on how it and Dark Souls relate to fighting games. What are the parallels between Souls and fighting games? And can playing one help you understand the other? Combat in Dark Souls is king. Yes, there's a variety of areas to explore and item descriptions to extrapolate into a 4-hour YouTube video, but most of us are here to swing massive weapons at all who oppose us. Which brings me to my first comparison: weapon and character selection. In fighting games, picking a character involves asking yourself a couple of questions. What kind of playstyle am I looking for? What ranges are this character most effective at? Who's got the most drip and why is it Slayer? And all of our decisions moving forward in a match are determined by the characters either player is playing at the time. The same can be said for picking a weapon in Dark Souls. Fighting with a baller swag sword is going to be much more different than when you're slinging homing soul mass with reckless abandon. Sure, the RPG aspect of building a character's stats plays a bit more into this in Dark Souls, and you are finding these weapons in the world as opposed to picking them from a character selection screen like you would in fighting games, but at the end of the day, you'll still be making those similar critical decisions when settling on your playstyle. For instance, I tend to focus on melee combat in Dark Souls 1 as it's more my speed, opting for great swords or dex weapons like the Uchi-Katana to fight comfortably from mid-range. A typical encounter for me would go something like this. I'll approach an enemy close enough to bait out an attack, then slowly move backwards outside of my opponent's range and punish them when they miss. There are even times where I'll swing just outside my weapon's effective range, knowing my enemy will block my attack with their face. Ooh! Sound familiar? This is a combination of two vital techniques of fighting games, Footsies and Whiff punishing. As defined in Infill's fighting game glossary, Footsies is a complicated, often nebulous term that refers to the battle for controlling the space in front of you, often by using good pokes. And whiff punishing is a particular kind of punish that will hit an opponent after they have whiffed an attack and are left recovering in the open. These two terms are so vital to the core fighting games that there are entire entries of the genre focused solely around them. Whether it's poking away at a rabid soul bad guy or fighting off a pack of wild dogs, these dogs, both of these genres teach the importance of controlling the space between you and your opponents and creating opportunities for yourself. Managing your resources is also incredibly vital in both fighting games and the Souls series. Throwing fireballs and dodging in and out of danger is really fun, but if you run out of gas in the tank, your joyride is going to end pretty quickly. In most modern fighting games, meter is a precious resource, granting you access to powerful attacks or additional game mechanics that allow you to extend combos, escape your opponent's pressure, and much more. It factors into your decision making at all levels of learning fighting games. For example, in a game like Street Fighter V, please don't sue me Capcom, your V-gauge is used for both your V-trigger mechanic, a way to power up your character and extend combos, as well as two defensive mechanics, V-shift and V-reversal. Knowing the benefits of each for both you and your opponent is important to navigate the many situations that occur in a match. Most of the same can be said for games like Dark Souls 1 and Elden Ring. While you don't have a dedicated super meter, almost all of your actions, from swinging your weapon to blocking and dodging enemy attacks, use stamina. Run out of stamina, and you're going to have a bad time. Just like your meters in fighting games, your stamina dictates what options are available to you in an encounter. Do you play with caution and use your movement and guarding to find an opening? Or do you use the last of your stamina to go for what you think may be the killing blow? And let's not forget your most vital resource in each of these games, your life bar. Obviously, if this hits 0, it's game over, but that doesn't mean you won't gamble a bit depending on how much life you have. Maybe you'll play a bit more risky in a match if you have a substantial life lead, or focus on building up your other resources for future rounds if you're about to lose. Or maybe you'll decide to DPS race that boss you've spent hours on just because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And hey, your character can take it. Probably. Perfects and clean fights are nice, but it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning. Execution is a vital aspect to the experience of both fighting games and the Souls series. Picking a high-tier character or power leveling in a game like Elden Ring will definitely help you, but if you don't fully understand your tools or your opponent, it's only a matter of time before you're sent home packing. Being able to successfully analyze an opponent and break them down to their habits or tendencies to exploit them is a key component of fighting games, but being able to do it quick enough to actually capitalize on that information is what separates the upper echelon of players from the rest of the crowd. Not to mention how difficult it is to achieve this under high-pressure situations. This connects to Dark Souls in its enemy variety and stakes. Throughout your journey to relink the flame, you'll run into a whole host of different enemies, each more dangerous than the last, all trying to kill you and put you at risk of losing your souls, the currency needed to level up your characters. From giants to rats and bone wheel skeletons, the sheer variety of enemies and attacks thrown at you can sometimes be overwhelming. And while it may be tempting to give in to the urge to panic during these encounters, the individual enemies in Dark Souls 1 have limited movesets to actually attack you with, and either through the process of careful and studious observation, or in my case, dying a whole lot, you'll start to recognize and eventually react to the startup animations of attacks or patterns that these enemies will throw at you and take advantage of their weaknesses, just as you would playing a fighting game. Oh, my opponent jumps every time I throw a fireball? Here's an anti-air for your troubles. Artorias does that sick overhead every time I drink Estus? Well, let's bait that out and punish him for it. Or try anyways.
Oh my god!
This can also apply to instances of Dark Souls PvP, in which you and others can enjoy playing mind games in the same terrible netcode that has plagued most fighting game players for years. Or just get hacked, I guess. Getting good at fighting games is an endeavor. Seth Killian once described them to me as the inverse of the traditional power fantasy that most video games are selling. You are not a one-person army casually fighting off hordes of enemies and saving the world before breakfast. In fighting games, victory is never guaranteed. You could play a match perfectly and still lose because you're up against someone who's just better than you. It's a hard pill to swallow. You do have the potential to be great and strong, but you'll have to earn it the hard way, something that Dark Souls fans know all too well. You're going to have many losses and many deaths before you start to feel or see improvements in your gameplay, but when you succeed, nothing tops that sweet feeling of progression. Your character in Dark Souls will go stronger as you succeed in the game, not just in raw stats, but also with experience and knowledge of how the game works. The Souls series has plenty of situations that are designed to ambush or outright kill you the first time you encounter them. Over time though, you'll recognize these familiar trappings and start to approach situations with the caution they demand. One of the best expressions of progression in Dark Souls is indicated in the Bell Gargoyle boss fight near the beginning of the game. It's the first real wall that a lot of new players get stuck on as the fight demands a lot of you quite suddenly. You're dealing with a large but nimble enemy with a host of long-range and damaging attacks that also test how fast you can adjust your lock-on and camera controls to keep you from being blindsided, all while also dealing with a very narrow arena that will instantly kill you if you lose your footing or take a bad hit. And this is before the game surprises you with a second gargoyle to deal with at the same time. It's a very tough encounter and requires a ton of discipline and patience to triumph over. But the true mark of progression comes many hours later, when the game throws a similar handicap match at you, this time against Ornstein and Small. Everything you learned from the earlier Bell Gargoyles encounter and your time throughout Lordran culminates in this difficult but exciting boss fight, focusing down targets, being aware of your surroundings, using the environment to your advantage, and picking your shots. It's the perfect bookend to seeing your potential fully realized in Dark Souls, and should have been where the game ended. We have similar trials in fighting games, but they're a bit more personalized. There isn't really a raid boss or general mission for most of us to complete in fighting games outside of becoming a stronger player, but if you're around the competitive scene enough, you'll hear all sorts of goals from fellow players. I want to get out of pools at a major. I want to win my local. I want to improve in this specific matchup. Or the classic,
I want to beat that fucking guy. Like, that guy pissing me off. I don't like that guy. I don't like the way he plays. I don't like anything about him.
We all have our goals and our individual marks of progression with fighting games, just like we do when playing Dark Souls, and both require dedication. Just like how you should dedicate yourself to hitting the like button if you're digging this video. It really does help the channel. Thanks. There's one more area in which Dark Souls and fighting games truly overlap, and it's actually one that has nothing to do with combat at all, and that's community. The Souls series is designed in a very old school way. There are little to no in-game tutorials, and finding a way forward sometimes requires lots of experimenting and backtracking. However, there's an in-game messaging tool that allows other players to leave messages with set phrases to either provide encouragement, warn about traps and dangerous situations, or just troll a bunch of people to their ultimate demise.
Can I write you a message with my soapstone right now?
Sure.
Try courage.
This mirrors a similar problem in fighting games in that, for the most part, learning how to play fighting games is actually quite difficult. For a genre that's been around for damn near 30 years, it isn't until recently that developers have built solid tools and training modes to help newcomers. And that's where the fighting game community comes into play. Just like in Dark Souls, sometimes it's just better to talk to other players to figure out how to get better at fighting games. Looking on how to optimize your combos with a specific character? Maybe look up videos from higher ranked players to get some ideas. What about dealing with a troublesome matchup or Oki situation? Why not ask to run a first to 5 with a character specialist to gain more insight and practice? And just like Dark Souls, you too can enjoy all the toxic backseaters in chat anytime a major tournament happens on Twitch. We are all in this together. I'm excited to continue my journey with the Souls series and the parallels they have with my favorite genre in gaming. If you're a fan of the Souls series and fighting games, but may have been intimidated by one or the other, I hope you found that this video has helped assuage some of those concerns, and I hope to see you soon either at a tournament or on the fields and the lands between. Until next time.